Can Perry do it? Can he do it in 3 straight sets? Excitement's at fever pitch.
That's it. He's won it. He's won it. That's it.
Game, set, Mark Mishra. 2 sets to 1. 7-6. 1-6.
Game, 7 match.
Venus Williams is the champion once again for the 5th time here at Wimbledon.
6-4.
There's a new man at the heart of men's tennis.
6-4, 6-4, 6-7, 6-7.
It's the last week of the championships at Wimbledon, the world's most prestigious tennis tournament. As always, the 2 final days attract the biggest crowds, who come from all corners of the globe to watch the best in tennis. For many players, playing on the grass of the All England Lawn Tennis Club, this is the ultimate experience. Winning the championships is every player's dream. One reason why it's special to spectators lucky to be there in person or at home watching on TV. Wimbledon and the British summer go together like strawberries and cream. Whether from Henman Hill or at home on the sofa, the British public are able to enjoy uninterrupted coverage for 2 weeks thanks to the BBC's television broadcast. The All England Lawn Tennis Club has been organising the championships for over 100 years, and for the past 70, it's built one of the most iconic working relationships in broadcasting history. 1937, and TV coverage of the championships was the first of any sporting event. This was exciting stuff. There was only one channel, and everything was black and white. Today, there are several, and a host of selections through the red button. The BBC holds the broadcasting rights for Wimbledon, and it distributes its commercial-free feed to outlets worldwide. Wimbledon's most valuable asset is the grass. Staff work around the clock to make sure it's as perfect as possible for the 2-week tournament. Behind the scenes, the BBC engineers and production staff work to deliver quality coverage from all angles of the court.
Every year, the BBC brings live televised coverage of the Wimbledon Championships to UK homes and the world over. But last year, that partnership almost ended with the All England Lawn Tennis Club. The championships was on the line.
Covering Wimbledon and all the matches like this one on court number 15 is expensive. The BBC's new licence fee settlement means it's frozen till 2017. As a result, cuts of £700 million a year are being made. Several sporting events have moved to other channels, like the Grand National, to Channel 4. Recently, the BBC announced they were down to choosing between Formula 1 and Wimbledon, but in the end, there was good news. We know that the Wimbledon fortnight has a very special place in the hearts of the UK public. We are delighted that our new agreement ensures coverage of the championships remains free to air and available to licence fee payers. BBC's Director of Sport, Barbara Slater, made the announcement after they sealed a new deal with the All England Lawn Tennis Club. They will continue to cover Wimbledon until at least 2017. Wimbledon is more than just a sporting event.
People who watch Wimbledon, and that they're not really out-and-out tennis fans, they probably haven't watched the French Open or the American Championships or the Australian, so they're not looking at the other Grand Slams, but they do watch Wimbledon. And it's you know, there's a little old lady syndrome, you know, so I like to watch my Wimbledon and so on, but they actually only have just about the knowledge of the sport to know what's happening. But they watch it. It's part of the British summer, if you like, although with this sort of weather, who can tell, but it is something.
Professor Grattan was part of a consultation that reviewed the government's list of protected events. This list, part of the 1996 Broadcast Act, covers sporting events which ensures that those of national resonance and significance stay on free-to-air channels.
Cricket was one of the big items that we had to consider, Test cricket, particularly against Australia when in Britain. And during 2009, when the committee was sitting, we won the Ashes against Australia. The 10 o'clock news that night, the first item on the BBC 10 o'clock news was England has won the Ashes. Is that of national resonance when the editor of a national news channel, and don't forget cricket was not on the BBC, it was on Sky. So the BBC put as their first item on the national news, the most important thing to have happened in this country was when England have won the Ashes. That's when you know it's of national resonance. Other indicators would be when you ask people. We had a social survey of 2,000 people, and we asked them, what events do you consider of national resonance? And events like Ashes cricket came up, events like Wimbledon came up.
But for Wimbledon, not all 2 weeks count.
It's a national sporting event, but in terms of our listed events legislation, it's only finals day that counts as of national significance in that sense. So it's only the Saturday and the Sunday of Wimbledon and the second week of Wimbledon that counts as a national sporting event.
The All England Lawn Tennis Club made a strategic decision to agree to the BBC coverage for the entire 2 weeks.
They've got the ability to let the highest bidder, which would probably be Sky, take the whole of the event other than the last 2 days. There is a problem in terms of doing that, because anybody that shows everything other than the pinnacle of the championship would be a devalued asset for a broadcaster if they showed everything other than the final 2 days.
It's been over 70 years since the country last saw a British male player make the final at Wimbledon, and today marks a huge day in British tennis as Andy Murray attempts to become the first Brit to win the men's singles title since Fred Perry in 1936. For many fans here at Cardiff Lawn Tennis Club, watching it on the BBC is even more important.
What I like about it is the fact that lots of different tennis stars with great personalities seem to all sort of come and go, so nobody's on for too long. You've got lots of different people, and they've got great great characters like John McEnroe, I think he's brilliant, Boris Becker, and yet they're respectful to players of today. They don't try and sort of love, but they're really good insights, and I think they're very funny and some good humour.
I'm not really bothered about what channel it's on. I think it's better if they're on to the adverts, because they just ruin it. I mean, I don't think you'll find anyone who would think it would be benefit the actual telly if they had adverts in it. So I think BBC's done well again.
I hate commercial breaks. I think it's something. Say Sky Sports do cricket, and they have a very short break between every over. So that's not too bad. But as soon as you get 4-minute breaks, like on Channel 4 or things like that, I hate them. I'd rather watch it an hour late and then fast forward all the adverts, because you just get really impatient.
Yeah, I enjoyed the coverage. Yeah, I mean it's you've got all the old sort of greats there with their commentary and stuff, and yeah, it's just nice to get the sort of continuation of the comments and yeah, no interruptions and breaks with the adverts and stuff is good. Yeah.
The British Lawn Tennis Association is an integral part to tennis tournaments across the UK, and at Tennis Wales, they believe that great sporting moments should be shared with everyone.
I think it's incredibly important, and I'm not sure what the viewer figures were for that match, but I'm sure they were extremely high. The whole country, especially with the first British finalist at Wimbledon for 74 years. These are big sporting moments, and of course, we want the British public to be able to watch that, and we saw that with the 2005 Ashes, actually, with such a big event, with the whole population behind it, and from a tennis point of view, from an LTA and a Tennis Wales point of view, we would hope that that it's as much as possible Wimbledon is able to stay on free-to-air television, so that you know, everyone in Britain has got the opportunity to watch it. But you know, it is a very highly competitive commercial market and a commercial decision at the end of the day, and a lot of factors to be weighed up.
But some critics argue that the BBC, faced with budget cuts, has thrown in the towel and is cutting back on some of the nation's biggest sporting events. But as one former executive puts it, the BBC has to make tough decisions.
I don't believe the BBC has thrown in the towel at all, but I do think the BBC, which is having to undergo 16% budget cuts over a period of years, has some very hard choices to make. And it can't simply go on doing everything that it's done in the past, particularly when sports rights owners want more and more money in return for coverage. So it has to make some hard choices. Somebody like Sir Paul Fox feels passionately about sport and would like the BBC to spend a lot more on sport than it does, but the reality is that the last licence fee deal did mean there were going to have to be 16% cuts and hard choices made. I also think the whole broadcast environment is changing, and the days in which the BBC could have a virtual monopoly over big sports have gone. And these days we've got satellite and cable, multi-channel, and increasingly online and digital rights as well. And therefore I think we're going to see more and more rights-sharing deals across different operators and different platforms.
If something changed with the BBC coverage, that it isn't what it is now, if it devalues it in some way, then that will be the impetus for Wimbledon to start to look elsewhere. So it's the quality of the coverage that the BBC gives. And we all know now that the BBC is under huge pressure to reduce costs by 20%. If that affects the Wimbledon quality of coverage, then that's when issues will start to be raised. If you do change it, then you change that relationship to some of those fans. So you'll get the people that really want to watch tennis, they will continue to watch, and as long as they've got access to, if it's a satellite provider, which it probably would be Sky, might even be Eurosport, who are quite big in tennis. But whatever it would be, you would need a cable or satellite provision. So if you haven't got that, then you are excluded. And tennis isn't the sport you go into a pub and watch together with a great big audience. It's not that type of audience, so it's not football. There is something when you lose the BBC, because the BBC has traditionally been what British sport is associated with. So just moving from the BBC, you lose something. But if you move to ITV, it wouldn't be as big a drop as if you move from to a non-terrestrial broadcaster.
The BBC is the national broadcaster. For many years, big events like the Wimbledon Championships have been seen as belonging to it.
A large part of what a broadcaster brings to coverage of the sport are the commentators and the presenters and the way it showcases the sport. So it's very important for the BBC to think hard to make sure they have the right kinds of presenters and the right balance of presenters in doing it, and that's something that they're very good at.
I'd like to watch as much sport as I'd like as much sport as possible to be on free-to-air TV, and especially tennis. So, you know, if we're able to get that situation where the commercial side of it works out, that the BBC can continue to run the majority of the coverage, then you know that'd be great for tennis.
I think the partnership between the BBC and Wimbledon is a very strong and essential to both organisations, really, because it's such a long-standing one. Wimbledon is absolutely a premier sporting occasion for Britain. BBC is the British national broadcaster, so it's a very good fit and a very long relationship. And I think of all the sports that the BBC runs, Wimbledon, in my view, would be the last to go or migrate to another broadcaster.
There's no guarantee it will stay on the BBC. The licence fee won't be reviewed for 4 more years. That's a long time, and anything could happen. It's hard to tell what lies ahead for the broadcast of the Wimbledon Championships. For the vast majority of the public, however, BBC coverage is all they've known. If it does change, it'll be a whole new chapter for the world's oldest tennis tournament.